And welcome to my channel. My name is Venus, and today I'm talking about all of the books that I read in the month of July and August. Yes, I am super late, but I'm a completionist. Just because I take a month off doesn't mean I don't want to talk about all the books that I read while I wasn't filming. So as always, I like to go from my least favorite up into my favorite book. There was one DNF, so we're just going to jump right in. So my DNF for the end of summer was This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I was incredibly bored with this book. This is about Lucy, who goes to Prince Edward Island to her best friend's beach house, family beach house. She goes there, she has and immediately when this book opens up, a one-night stand with Felix, who is her best friend's brother, but she had no idea that that's her best friend's brother. So we jump forward in time. I don't think they've been talking anymore. It was just like a one-time fling situation. And the thing that really irritated me about this book was Lucy's relationship with her best friend. It was super annoying. So her best friend's getting married and they're getting ready to do her wedding rehearsal, gown fitting or whatever. I think Lucy is a florist or something. And her friend calls her and says, "Look, I just need you to come to Prince Edward Island right now, immediately." So she's not even going to her wedding dressing rehearsal thing. Lucy drops everything and goes, and it's just she just shows up and she's like, "Okay, let's just hang out." Let's doesn't say anything about what's going on. And we're supposed to just get strung along the whole book until she finally discovered or feels revealing what's going on. I don't know. I couldn't stand it. And I didn't like the way Lucy was basically her doormat. I hated it. So I don't like best friend relationships that are like this. I also wanted this to be a romance book. I don't give a shit about the friendship. And the romance was lame. It was no chemistry whatsoever. So I DNF'd it. Okay, so next up is my least favorite book of July and August. This is a book that is very well loved, it seems like, for a lot of people on booktube, but I didn't like it at all. And that is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I am going to give this 2.5 stars. I just didn't. Oh, okay. So this book is about a man who is retelling his side of a story. He was an actor in a cult horror movie from back in the day. He was called I think he was called the Thin Kid. Yeah, he was called the Thin Kid. He's the only surviving member of this cast. And so we go on this venture with him as he is trying to have the movie remade, actually finished, because the parts of the movie that came out, there was just parts of it. It wasn't the whole movie, but it still became this cult classic. And so he's having it redone finally after a couple of failures of people saying they were going to do it and they never did. But it goes back and forth in time from when the movie was actually made until present while he's remaking it. There were definitely parts that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the goriness finally when we got to it towards the end. I think the biggest thing for me is I hated the two female characters in this so much. So one of them was one of his college friends. I can't remember if she was the producer or writer for this film, and then her friend is producer or writer. I don't know. Either one of them. I just didn't like them. They were so annoying. And then I guess very early on what happened in this film to make it so cult classic. And then when we got to that part, it was very anticlimactic for me. So I'm sorry. I did not enjoy this book. I will say the audiobook was fantastic. It almost felt like you were at a table read when they were reading the script. That was very enjoyable, except for when they kept repeating lines over and over again. But other than that, not for me. Next up, another book very popular over the summer is The Eyes Are the Best Part, and this is by Monika Kim. This one I'm giving a 2.75. I'll probably round up to 3. I overall enjoyed this book. So this book is following a Korean American woman. I loved her perspective, absolutely loved her perspective. She's a young woman, I want to say maybe 18, 19, and her mother, bless her mother's heart, is going through it because their father left her or left them. And so she, is Korean, and she very much, I guess, revolves her life around her husband and her family. And when he leaves, it almost feels like she has no purpose. So she's determined to, thinks that this man is going to come back. And so the fish eyes come into play because when you eat the eye of a fish, apparently it's supposed to be good luck. So her mom, this opening scene very much is her mom chowing down on an eyeball, and it's very graphic. Ugh. I loved it. I loved it. But I hated the ending of this book. So as we go through the book, we see that there's two daughters. The main character, she's kind of awkward a little bit, and she makes friends, but she doesn't realize that this one friend, this guy, is like obsessed with her. So that part kind of annoyed me because I'm like, how do you not see that he's obsessed with you? And then it kind of hinted at some kind of like sapphic crush, but never really, I feel like, played that out completely. But then, bless her mother, so she finally gets over her father and she starts dating a white man with blue eyes. And he has this sick fetish for Asian women. He is like a horrible character. And so the daughter, the main character, she starts fantasizing about eyeballs and killing people, and it goes from there. And that part of it was fun to me. I just hated the way it ended. I hated the way it ended. Like, it took this weird turn at one point, and I don't want to spoil anything, where they tried to explain maybe why she was having these thoughts or why things were happening to her. And I was like, no, why? Why did you put that? I just hated that part of it. So unfortunately, not a win for me. But I did like this author's writing. I would definitely read more from her. Like I said, I overall enjoyed it. I was just missing some things that I really wanted, and I hated the ending. So 2.753 stars. Next up is In the Hour of Crows by Dana Elmendorth. This one I gave 3 stars. This is like a gothic magical realism murder mystery type situation, and it was just okay. I definitely wanted more of the magical realism. So in this, we are following a woman who, her cousin, I think it's her cousin, is murdered. Well, she's like involved in a hit and run, and she dies. And the town mayor is accused of it, but he never goes to trial. It gets like thrown away. So what is her name? So Weatherly is determined to figure out what happened to her. Oh gosh, is it her cousin? Let's figure it out. Yes, her cousin. And so Weatherly has like this kind of like power where can almost like talk death out of taking someone it's kind of weird what she can do, but she can prevent death from taking someone's life by like tricking them. Yeah, this is one of those books where I can barely remember what happened. Like she does something where she can talk death out of taking someone's life. She hucks loogies, and her grandmother like collects it in a jar. I mean, it's kind of weird. And it was overall enjoyable. I definitely like the vibes of this book. The dialogue in it was very relatable. It was very well done. There were parts where I was really bored. I think the biggest thing for me is I didn't care what happened to the cousin. Didn't care. And then where crows come into play, there's this young man who appears to Weatherly as a man sometimes, or then he's a crow. And then you kind of really don't know until towards the end, like where this plays into the story. And I definitely wanted more of that. I loved the ending. Thought that was cool. But yeah, this was just okay for me. I would definitely read more from this author, though. Next up is What Have We Done by Shari Lapena. This is my first book by this author, and I overall enjoyed it. I think I gave this one 3 stars. I need to get my reading journal because I can't remember. I read these books so long ago. I just look at my new way that I did my spread for August. I had fun with that one. Anyway, not why you're here. So I gave this book 3 stars. So in this book, we are following a group of what the fuck? I don't remember. This is like a small town murder mystery. A young girl named Diana is found dead in this like farmer's cornfields in his field. And she's naked, and it's horrible for this town. There are a bajillion points of view in this book, and we go back and forth from all of them. It's all different people in the town, which I enjoy. I do like that. I liked it a lot, actually. The only thing is this was very predictable. There is a tiny, tiny paranormal element to it that I wish there were more of. And there's really not much to say. It's very typical murder mystery about a young girl found. I don't want to give too much away, but like once you start getting points of views from the different people, you kind of can figure out what's going to happen. I'll just say that. So overall 3 stars, but I'll definitely check out more of this author's books because I did enjoy the writing, just maybe not this storyline. Next up is Breaking the Dark by Lisa Jewell. This is the first in a new Marvel thriller series that I'm very excited about. Unfortunately, did not love this one that much. I gave this one I'm going to say 3.5 stars, mostly because Lisa Jewell is a great writer. I did very much enjoy her writing. It just was, again, the storyline. So we are following Jessica Jones, who used to be a superhero, if you are involved or any of the Marvel Universe characters. And she's going through it. She's drinking a little too much. She seems to be depressed. And she has a mom that comes to her. So now I think she's a private investigator. And her mom comes to her and asks her to try to figure out what happened to her children. Because when they came back from their father's house in Britain, they come back and they're not the same kids. They're perfect. Their face, their complexions are perfect. Their mannerisms are gone. They're very different children. So Jessica goes over to London, I think it is, and meets a girl that they were hanging out with. The story unfolds. There's a villain, just like with any superhero Marvel storyline. The villain and the premise and motive behind what happened to these kids were just very lame to me. I didn't care at all, and that's the only thing that dragged down this book. There's also something going on with Jessica and her boyfriend Luke Cage that she's keeping from him that's dragged through the whole story that I literally did not care at all about one way or the other. That finally got resolved at the end, but I didn't care. So it was just things that I wasn't really interested in. I did really so you know how there's superheroes always had a little sometimes a teenager sidekick who wants to be their apprentice. There was someone like this in this book for Jessica, and he was so funny. I loved his character. So I'm excited to see where this series goes. The next book in the series is from the point of view of Luke Cage, and it's written by S.A. Cosby, who is one of my favorite thriller authors, the author of Razor Blade Tears. And I'm very interested to see what he does with this Marvel thriller series, but yeah, so I'm selling on a 3.5 for this one. So next up is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. She's the author of, I think it's called Long Bright River, which I really, really enjoyed. This book, I overall enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars, but it was too damn long. It was just too damn long. The vibes of the camp background and the setting were fantastic. It just was very drawn out to try to figure out what happened to this young girl who goes missing in her bunk at this camp. And this isn't the first time that someone has gone missing at this camp. Her brother actually went missing many years ago. And so now there's these two missing people from this rich, wealthy family. Two of their children have gone missing from this camp. This book takes place in the 70s. It's like a historical fiction thriller type vibe. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I just think it was too long. I think the twists in it were pretty good. Some of them were pretty predictable. Anytime you're dealing with a wealthy, rich family, I feel certain things, certain tropes are just so repetitive, and it was kind of done in this book. But overall, I really did enjoy it. I just feel it was too long, like I said. So I love Liz Moore. I'm excited to read more of her work. So we'll see what she comes up with next. Next up is Cujo by Stephen King. This one I also gave 3.5 stars. This one's probably going to be one of my least favorite books. It's not terrible, but on the lower end out of all of the Stephen King books that I read, because, okay. So Cujo is about a dog who is bitten by a bat, and he gets rabies, and he, of course, loses his damn mind and goes on a killing rampage, which sounds fun. Sounds fantastic. You actually get to be in Cujo's mind a couple times in this book, which I wish there were more of that. Unfortunately, you really follow the point of view from the family that's involved in this. So there's a husband, wife, and a son. The wife is trash, and I don't know, is this going to be a spoiler if I say what she did? It doesn't. Okay, so I don't want to say, I'm just going to say the wife is trash. That's what we're going to say. So the husband and wife are dealing with some domestic issues, and the son, he has these weird nightmares. The main thing that kind of was so boring in this book for me is that Stephen King goes into great detail about what the father does as an advertisement I don't know, he does something with advertising and commercials. And I mean, he goes into great detail about the commercials, the job side of it, like what him and his partner have to do to keep these like clients. I mean, it's like pages and pages about that I didn't care at all about. The things that I did like about it is once we get to like the horror part of it, when the mom and the son, it's Cujo, I feel like everybody kind of knows like the premise of this. So her car like breaks down and she goes to this family who owns Cujo. The father is a mechanic and drives to like the middle of nowhere to try to have this car fixed. Little do they know Cujo is going through some things. So they get there and she realizes they cannot get out of the car because Cujo is crazy. And so they are stuck in this car in the summer and she can't even roll down the windows. Like, can you imagine being in the car when it's like 90 degrees outside and you cannot roll down your windows? And it's her and her son stuck in this car. That's the scariness of it. That's like the horror part of it. And Cujo is like lurking. And every time she thinks she can try to make an escape for it, it's just like those things I loved about this book. But everything else, I didn't care at all. So 3.5 stars. Glad I have another Stephen King book read for this year. My goal is 6 books for the year. I think I'm at 4. So I have 2 more that I got to try to get into between now and December. So next up is a book by Catherine Steadman, and this is called Look in the Mirror. And this is a thriller book. This one surprised me. This one I'm giving 4 stars. This was a book that I had put on my most anticipated reads of the summer, I think, or July reads. And this one really surprised me. I went into it thinking it was going to be one thing, and then it ended up being something completely different. So in this book, we're following Nina. She lives in, I believe it's England, and her father passes away. He's like a very well-known, I think he's like an archaeologist. No, architect. Something like that. He's like a historian. He's very well known in his field. And he passes away. And then she finds out that he owns this house in, in a tropical paradise. And someone comes to her and is like, hey, you need to come over here. You know, there's paperwork that needs to be done. And you can stay in the house while it gets figured out. You can figure out if you want to sell it or do whatever. So she gets there and she goes to the house and she's like, it's this massive house. And part of it's like underground. And she's like, who was my father? Like, she thought she knew him. She thought they had a great relationship. And then she sees all this strange shit that he was involved in. And then you follow a nanny who is also visiting a house in like a tropical area. And the kids and the family never show up. And this woman keeps calling her. I guess the person that she got the job from is like, hey, just hang out. They're going to show up eventually. You know, just enjoy yourself, but do not go into this room. So there's one room that's like off limits. And it goes from there. And this book is wild. I had so much fun with this book, but like some weird underground shit that goes down. And I was like, it just takes this turn. And I'm like, oh my God, it was a fun ride. This was my first book by this author, and I will definitely read more from her. So I can't remember if I gave you my rating, but I gave this book 4 stars. Sorry, I had to change the lighting a little bit. The sun is doing something weird today. But the next book is It Had to Be You by Eliza Jane Brazier. This is another book that surprised me. This was just a random book that I picked up at Barnes & Noble based on the synopsis. And it said, what if John Wick was a rom-com? So this book is about 2 assassins who end up being hired to kill each other. I am not actually going to say too much more about this. This was very well written. There's some great action scenes in it. It's actually very funny, and there's steaminess in it. So it had like all of these elements that I absolutely loved. It was adventurous. It takes place in Europe, like different countries in Europe. There's like these train rides and locations that they have to go to. And it was really good. I was absolutely surprised by this one. And I feel like, again, another author that I absolutely want to read another book by. I think I'm learning that I really love books like about assassins and hitmen and like traveling through Europe and just like all that kind of stuff. Like, I love that. I love action-packed books, and this is definitely one of them. And you throw in romance, and it was a great time. Next up is Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle, and I loved this book. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. This was such a fun, ride. It was creepy. It was gory. This one actually, I did feel like had some sci-fi elements to it that I definitely won't get into because that's a huge spoiler. But the way that this book like kind of unraveled, it was very surprising, and it was a great time. So in this book, we're following what is he? I think he's a writer. His name is Misha, and he just got nominated for an Oscar. His executives are coming to him and saying, hey, look, you need to rewrite this scene, because he had like a gay couple that were getting ready to have like a happy ending. And the executives were like, no, you need to write it. No, we don't really think that that's going to do well. The algorithm is not going to love it. The ratings aren't going to be good, whatever. So he's like, you are literally playing into the trope of bury your gays, where no gay couple ever gets a happy ending. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. So the representation in this book is fantastic. It's like a big FU to Hollywood and how they treat the queer community. And I loved it so much. The writing was so good. There is an element of it that, like I said, is super creepy. So Misha, I guess, wrote a bunch of different crazy, weird characters, and he starts seeing them. And he thinks that they're like fans that are just reenacting some of his like more like crazy characters. But no, he's like really seeing them, and some like wild stuff starts happening. And it's just a wild ride. It's a horror book. It was fun times. I will definitely read more from this author as well. Man, the last couple books, like, I'm excited to read more from this author too. So like, I could really see this book being a movie. Like, I think it would be a really fun movie. So great time. Loved it. And then my favorite book of July and August is going to be Sharp Ends. This is more like a short story collection by Joe Abercrombie. I am not someone who loves reading short story collections. Actually, I think this is the first one that I finished. I haven't even read any Stephen King short story collections. I don't know what it is. I just can never get into them. This one I read straight through, loved almost every one of the stories, some more than others, obviously, but fun times. So this is a fantasy short story collection based on the First Law world by Joe Abercrombie. The first 3 books is the First Law trilogy. Then we have 3 like standalone books that bridge into his Age of Madness trilogy. And this one is you're supposed to read it right before the Age of Madness trilogy, which I plan on reading in the winter. So I had to get this done, and I'm so glad that I did. So I'm giving this one 4.5 stars. I just loved being in this world, revisiting some of these characters. One character that is absolutely adored by most fans of the First Law trilogy is Glocka. He is a man that was was a prisoner of war and disfigured, and he's all jacked up in his appearance, and he is the best inner monologue that you could possibly imagine by any character that I have ever read about. And you get to meet him, or get a little glimpse of who he was prior to being tortured, and he's still a jerk and an arrogant, funny character. It's not really from his point of view, but it was so nice to see a different side of him before he became the Glocka that we all know and love. And then there was a bunch of other stories from other characters as well. Some of them kind of interplayed with each other. Some of them were not connected at all. But overall, I had a great time. So I can't wait to finally start Age of Madness. So those are all of the books that I read in July and August. We are finally caught up. I hopefully will do my September wrap up on time. But yeah, so I don't know. What was your favorite book this summer? Let me look at my journal real quick and figure out what book was my favorite of this summer. I think I'm going to have to say Bury Your Gaze. Bury Your Gaze was my favorite book this summer. So let me know below what was the best book that you read this summer. Did you have a good summer of reading? I feel like mine was kind of bland, except for the last few books that I just talked about. But overall, yeah, they were all kind of just okay. So I'm very excited about fall, and I'm hoping that fall becomes a much better reading experience for me. Well, now through the end of the year, really. So as always, thank you guys for stopping by, and I will see you again soon. See ya.